word of wisdom from Father TJ for everyone on this Mother's Day. If you don't want to have to help pay for your daughter's therapy bills later in life, don't name her Dorcas when she is born. Please be seated. One of my favorite stories of all time comes out of the Zen Buddhist tradition. I've told you this story before, but it's that good that, I'm going to tell it again. It's about a Japanese Zen master named Hakuin, who lived a really long time ago. Well, one day, a samurai soldier came to Hakuin, and the soldier asked him, "Tell me, master, is there really such a thing as heaven and hell?" But the Zen master didn't answer the question. Instead, he gruffly asked, "And who are you?" "I'm a samurai," the soldier said, beaming with pride. But the Zen master balked. "Ha! You, a samurai? What person in their right mind would hire you to protect them? You look like a poor beggar." The soldier was so outraged by the insult that he almost drew his sword and struck the Zen master dead right then and there, but he decided to bite his tongue and to maintain his composure. But seeing that he had struck a nerve, the Zen master decided to jab just a little bit more. "Oh, so you have a little sword. I bet it's probably too dull to even chop off my head." Well, at this point, the soldier became so furious that he actually drew his sword and he reared back. He was going to lob that Zen master's head clean off right then and there. But before he could strike, he heard the Zen master whisper to him, "This is hell." And he froze in place as he recognized the wisdom in these words. And once he started to put his sword back in its sheath, he heard the Zen master whisper to him again, saying, "And this is heaven." There are several little nuggets of wisdom that can be gleaned from this story. One of them being that it offers a pretty radical paradigm shift for how most of us today think about heaven and hell. The samurai soldier came to Hakuin to ask him if there really is such a place as heaven and if there really is such a place as hell. But Hakuin revealed to him that heaven and hell are not places that people go to in the afterlife, as much as they are conditions of the heart that people begin to cultivate already in this life. In other words, the realities of heaven and hell, they begin to bleed over, spill over onto everyday life by the ways in which we choose to live our lives. In other words, hell is the sword drawn out of rage. Heaven is the blade put back in its sheath. Another way of saying it, hell is vice, heaven is virtue. Seen in this light, then, it would mean that hell is not something that God punishes people with in the afterlife. No, hell is self-inflicted punishment. Seen in this way, heaven is not something that God rewards people with, good people with in the afterlife. The good is already heaven embodied. The good is its own reward. See, the other day I took my 6-year-old son to swim class down the street at the Y here. And I watched as all of the other kids in his class acted up, little tyrants. And the teacher had to get on to each and every single one of them, but not my child. He was a perfect angel the entire time. And after walking out from swim class, after it was over, we're walking to the car, and I told him how proud I was that he had resisted the temptation to act like a little tyrant, like all of the other little children. And he responded by saying this, "Daddy, since I was so good, don't you think I deserve a reward? Like a toy or some candy or some ice cream or something. I think I've earned it, don't you?" Sneaky little one. But I told him that day that being good is its own reward. And I told him this, not mainly because I'm miserly and I didn't want to go spend money on more stuff, but that too. But I told him this because I truly believe that being virtuous is a reward unto itself. Where enslaving oneself in some vices is self-inflicted torture. So with this in mind, the final thing that can be gleaned from our old Buddhist story this morning is a teaching that makes its appearance in every single reading that we have from the Bible this morning. But it's a teaching that is almost impossible to grasp unless you've spent years and years of your life trying to develop more resilience, a more resilient character, and a thicker skin, and a more virtuous heart. And the teaching is this: that heaven is not the absence of insult, and hell is not the presence of insult. When the Zen master initially insulted the samurai soldier, that was not hell yet. But when the soldier responded to the insult with murderous rage, that was the moment that hell was manifested in him. And when the Zen master stopped insulting the soldier, this was not heaven yet. It was only when the soldier put his sword away that he embodied a heavenly way. In other words, heaven and hell are not found in our circumstances in life. No, they are found in how we choose to respond to our circumstances in life. Heaven is not a trouble-free existence, nor is hell synonymous with an unfortunate life. No. Heaven and hell are found exclusively in how we choose to react to whatever it is that life throws our way. There's another Buddhist saying, I'm not becoming Buddhist, just to let you know, but there's some good stuff there. There's another Buddhist saying that's really good. And it goes like this: when an arrow inflicts us in life, when something unfortunate happens to us that causes us a lot of pain and suffering, we have to be on our guard, or else we will be struck by a second arrow. The Buddha explained that the first arrow is the thing in life that causes us to suffer, and it's something that is beyond our control. A death in the family, bad news from the doctor, an accident that leads to an injury, being laid off from work, things like this. But the second arrow is the thing that is well within our control, for the second arrow is our emotional response to that first arrow. As one ancient philosopher has said, we suffer not so much from our circumstances in life as much as we suffer from our opinions about those circumstances in life. If we choose to react to misfortune like a whiny child, wallowing in our own self-pity, being pissed off at God for the things that happen to us, you've been struck by the second arrow. And you've only doubled your misery. But if we choose instead to remain steadfast and resilient, if we choose to see misfortune as an opportunity to develop more grit, more character, to refine our virtues, then we will watch as that second arrow just flies right on by. My friends, heaven is not the absence of difficulty. But heaven can be manifested by how we choose to respond to difficulty. I mean, is this not the theme that's in every single reading from this morning? Yes, Tabitha or Dorcas, whatever you prefer, she did experience resurrection, but what had to happen first? She had to die. And where did our psalmist say that he discovered the comfort of God's presence? Where did the rod and staff comfort him? Was it in a beachy paradise, or was it in the valley of the shadow of death? In our reading from Revelations, what did the angel say about the multitude of saints in heaven? That they had avoided the great ordeal, or that they had endured it, had come out of it? The interesting thing about this verse is that in the original language, it's not written in past tense. It's written in present tense. It shouldn't read, they have come out of the great ordeal, but that they are the ones who are right now coming out of the great ordeal. Even though they have reached heaven's perfections, they are still processing earth's imperfections. Again, heaven is not the absence of suffering. In our gospel reading for today, Jesus goes to the temple. He was there for the festival of the dedication, or as we know it, Hanukkah. And several people came up to him and said, "Tell us plainly, are you the Messiah or aren't you? Are you the guy for the job or not," right? And Jesus told them that had they really been paying attention to him, to his actions, to his words, they would have known the answer to their question all along. But the problem was that they had their own ideas about what the Messiah was supposed to do for them. It's really significant that they asked him this question during this festival, during Hanukkah. You see, the festival of dedication, or Hanukkah, was a holiday where the people remembered and celebrated the time that a guy named Judas Maccabees had led a successful revolt against the Roman Empire. At that time, Rome had taken the temple away from the Hebrew people, and they had desecrated it. And even though these Jewish freedom fighters weren't able to completely conquer the Romans, they were able to take back control of some of their land, and more importantly, they were able to win back their temple. And after the victory, they dedicated the temple to God again. Thus why it's called the temple, or the festival of dedication. Can you see some of the subtext here? Can you hear what these people are implying as they ask whether or not Jesus is the Messiah? They're not asking whether or not he will save them from their sins, save them from their own self-destructive tendencies. They're asking if Jesus is going to be the guy who will pick up where Judas Maccabees left off. Is he going to be the guy who is the warrior who finally finishes the job once and for all? These people wanted to know if Jesus was going to be the military leader who would completely annihilate all of Israel's enemies. In the face of pagan oppression, they believed that heaven could only come about if Jesus drew the sword and cut off the emperor's head. Strike the Roman emperor down, the Roman shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. That was the idea. Jesus responds by saying if these people truly were his sheep, they would have been more receptive to him than they were to their own warped ideas about him. Then, instead of saying that he's come to liberate his people, restoring unto them a land flowing with milk and honey, saving them from all evil, he says instead that he's come to teach his people that no matter what happens to them in life, no matter what afflicts them, they shall never perish. And that no one will ever be able to pry them out of his hands. Another way of saying it, Jesus didn't come to liberate his people from suffering, but to show them that no matter how much they are afflicted by life, he's got them. He is with them. He didn't come to swoop in and rescue them from all of their difficulties, but rather to show them just how much he is there by their side as they are enduring difficulty. Moral of the story, if you're looking for Jesus to swoop in and to save you from all of your problems, if you're hoping that he will make your circumstances a little bit more heavenly and a lot less hellish, I'm sorry to say you're going to be sorely disappointed. Like the people in this story, you will spend your entire life wondering whether or not Jesus really is the Messiah or not, because you will spend your entire life misunderstanding the one thing that he was all about from the very beginning. For his way is the way of the cross, the way of self-sacrifice, not self-preservation. But if you accept that suffering is a fact of life, if you accept the cross as a fact of life, if you accept that the only way out of the empty tomb is through the cross, if you accept that the only way to Easter Sunday is through Good Friday, then even that valley of the shadow of death will never be able to rob you of the comfort that you will always have in Christ's presence. And that, my friends, is your salvation. Your homework for this week: change the way you pray. Instead of praying for there to be less insulting people in your life, pray that you will instead have the wisdom to put away your sword. Instead of praying that God will take away all of your heartache, pray instead for a stouter heart. Instead of praying for your circumstances to be less hellish, pray instead for your reaction to these circumstances to be less hellish. Instead of asking for a more heavenly life, pray instead for a more heavenly soul. Don't pray for the absence of suffering. Pray instead for greater resilience to endure suffering. Turn your prayers around this way, and you will see each and every single one of them being